Welcome to Thoughts and Discourses on Digital Transformation. Dive into a world of insightful conversations and profound ideas.
Okay, well, we're back with another series of thoughts and discourses on application modernization. This time I thought, okay, we need to do some of discussions around different strategies towards modernizing applications. And they're basically known as, the 6 R's, which are rehost, replatform, retain, rehire, etc., etc. And so we'll actually talk through all 6 of these. But first, I want to introduce my 2 partners in crime, Maverick Zhang and David Schwietz. So Maverick, you want to go first and quickly introduce yourself?
Well, yeah, thank you. Thank you for inviting me here. Maverick, they have more than 25 years experience in this IT industry. So my experience all over the places, from the individual independent software vendor side to the customer side, to the consultant side, and to the service bureau side as well. So now I'm holding the VP positions for Clearinghouse.
And David?
Yeah, hi, I'm David Schwietz. Hey, thanks a lot, Colin, for having me on board here. This is a great opportunity. I've got a kind of unique background, combination of business and technology. I've led strategies in startup organizations with one employee to large, complex organizations of over 300,000. So I've been doing this for, I guess it's going on 3 decades now. I'm getting old. But my technology background spans software development, architecture, network, data, cloud platforms, information security, and of course, like everybody nowadays, is the artificial intelligence side, and then a lot of process things as well that include project management, agile, business continuity, and risk. I've been across a lot of industries, good or bad, financial services, and payments, manufacturing and healthcare, and medical device, and just recently the sports world, which is sort of new to me and fascinating.
Great. So I want to start talking about, a couple of the first 2 R's, right? Rehost, which I also kind of call lift and shift, and also replatform. And so maybe Maverick, you can start. Maybe you define what you think about rehost and replatform, and then give us a couple of examples on when you would want to do rehost and what you would do with replatform.
Okay, so rehosting and replatform is kind of like this. Rehosting, in my mind, is just as Colin, as you mentioned, there's a lift and a shift. So that means usually rehosting, for example, rehosting mainframe applications is kind of the used to move existing workload and applications from mainframe to a different environment without significantly change to the original code. So that's called rehosting, lift and shift. Replatform is kind of a slightly different. It's a little bit beyond rehosting. We can call it lift thinking. It's tinker and shift. So that means we move from one environment to another, and we will take these opportunities to certain of the features or the component inside of the application in order to better benefits from the new or destination environments. For example, the cloud environments, new technologies, and so forth. Sometimes we can call this a replatform. It's a little bit software modernization like.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think rehost has probably evolved over time, when we were rehosting from servers to virtual servers, and then maybe nowadays even going from virtual servers over into cloud, and you get that cost differential moving from a capital investment to an expense. Maybe, David, you give us your impression on rehost and replatform, and when you would just rehost and when you might replatform.
Yeah. I think I'm in line with both of you on that. In the old days, I guess old days is like 10 years ago, rehosting was a big thing, just moving from on-prem to cloud. We saw a lot of that. But now what I'm seeing anyway, my experience, I know we all have different experiences, but we're seeing a lot of replatforming on different platforms, such as in products like Salesforce and Microsoft Dynamics, where you're trying to use more of a, an end-to-end architecture that then you sort of customize on top of that type of solution. And then what we see in the finance world a lot, I'm sure you've seen this, is common practices of trying to re-platform to vertical software products that are existing in the market. And I don't know about you two, but every time I've gone down that path, I've never seen anybody be able to re-platform to a product that's in the market and not customize it. And it's been going on for decades and decades.
Yeah, I think so. And that gets us more into the repurchase arena, where you're going to take several, maybe I see it more with internal applications, where you're going to take a bunch of legacy, old, never been maintained, but still running applications and repurchase them on top of Salesforce or ServiceNow or, Dynamics CRM. And then what I also see is one of the side effects is, you end up with big companies will actually have multiple of these platforms. They'll actually have, Salesforce and Dynamics or Salesforce and ServiceNow, and you get into internal wars because one team has been trained up on Salesforce, another team has been trained up on ServiceNow, and probably about a third of the applications can easily be put onto one platform or another, and it all depends on which team gets to do the migration, where it ends up. And there's very little strategy about, we want these types of applications to be on Salesforce versus these types of applications to be on Dynamics or ServiceNow or whatever. And you're absolutely right. That leads to a whole bunch of incompatible data. It's hard to extract value when you're across so many different platforms. The metadata management, data management aspects are a nightmare. Have you seen that kind of work, David?
Yeah. And in fact, I would even take it even a layer deeper on that same topic, is that, and I'm probably guilty myself, but you've seen a lot of CIOs come into organizations that strictly want to re-platform or re-architect just because they want to be in a technology stack that they're familiar with. And then what happens? It's, to your point, Colin, you have multiple stacks, and you can never standardize across your technology stack. You end up having multiple, and it's one of those drivers of, be careful why you're trying to either do one of the R's. You got to understand what the drivers of that are and how you're gonna approach that.
Yeah, and Maverick, what have you seen with the repurchase option and the issues and the type of applications that have been moved on to, for example, Salesforce?
Well, it's coming from this way. Let's say, usually when people are talking about this 6 R's, they always are starting from rehosting or replatform, but end up with re-architecting almost everything, redoing, rewriting.
No doubt.
That could be the way. So they move to the Salesforce or from one to another. That's, as you said, we see a ton of this kind of migrations end up with multiple applications they have and running in the parallel. And that will be, if the bad movement, sometimes leading for more complicated internal processes. And they have multiple places hosting the master of the data, out of sync the data, sync up the data, reporting lines, costing lines, audit lines, and everything is going to be very, very complicated. So that could end up sometimes.
I got a question for you. Think back in your career of all the times all of us and the times you've seen people would have to come up with an estimate for doing one of these things. And how many times has it been accurate?
Almost at zero, I have to say.
Right.
Yeah, the thing is, one of my experience in the past regarding the rehosting one thing, there's an application. This runs just a long time ago. Runs in the mainframe. Runs in a COBOL, and they were like, yes, let's just rehosting that. And evaluated, no. If we're rehosting into the Micro Focus, as the running cost is not that cheap, so then decided, okay, let's just do some sort of the shift and lift and shift. Hire some other guys coming in and use a tool to translate this COBOL to Java. And then, this is translated Java. This is another type things, Java type COBOL. No one can really maintain this. No one can really understand that. And compile it and run it, so take a long time to get there. But eventually the things is still some sort of unmaintainable. Yes, it does the garbage in, garbage out, but this is unmaintainable. The things like that end up like this.
Yeah, I think we should probably actually have a dedicated session on COBOL migration and project do's and don'ts and the strategy for that. And that would probably take 4 days to get done. But
I think that's one of yours where you just leave those. Sometimes you leave those alone, but I'm sure
that's a great point. One of the other R's is retain, right?
Yeah.
Which basically just you keep it going for better, for worse. So David, when would you actually go and put an application into this retain bucket and just keep it humming along?
Well, I think there's clearly that and I think we maybe have seen this more in the early 2000s, but there was a time where there was a lot of COBOL stuff around, and I think even up until 2000s, 2010s maybe, I think COBOL still had the most presentation of any development language out there for a long time. But that's an example where if you have a legacy system, you could probably find resources, and now the global technology resources to find talent to keep some of these running is a lot easier than it was in the past. That might be something you just might leave alone, and the reason, if it's functioning the way you want it, and it meets all your expectations. Because one of the things that I've always seen is when you try to estimate, back to that estimation, when you try to put an effort analysis on what it takes to replatform something or even rehost it, which is easier, there's the missing piece of unknown business functionality. Like that's a piece you seem to always get bit by, and you can't put a value on that because you don't. It's the unknown unknowns that you get that you're not going to realize until you get into the refactoring and the redesigning of the code. And there's always pieces in there that people don't know about. And for existing COBOL applications, you might leave that alone. Another example would be, again, back to a CIO coming in, and again, maybe I've done this, but somebody who, and I've been in this, I've seen it happen where there's a perfectly great, up-to-date .NET architected application, and the CIO comes in and wants to standardize on the Java platform and rewrites it, and there's no other business reason to do it except that person is a fan of a particular environment, and it gets rewritten for no value, and you spend a lot of money on it. That's something, especially if the architecture is up to date, you probably don't need to do that.
Yeah, I would agree. I think there are some downsides with retain. So, one of the ones I can think of is, especially if it's on COBOL, maybe if it's on the mainframe using IMS database versus, SQL-based technology, it's very hard to get at the data and extract value from the data, right? We're so much into trying to extract a lot more value out of the data we already have, either to put into large language models or to do better analytics on, et cetera, et cetera. So Maverick, what would be some of the downsides that you would see with just retaining these legacy applications?
One of the downside I'm thinking about is, for example, let's say back to late 90s and early 2000s, there's a lot of the applications right into, for example, that you utilize the BEA tuxedo a lot. Now it's a part of Oracle. So this platform is fantastic at that time. It's almost opened up the door. People can write application, use that one. It's pretty much like today's we're thinking about or utilize the microservices. There's so many applications right there. And until now, even today, it's 20, 25 years later, they're still running like that. That means, yes, now there's so many other things out there and better offer than the tuxedo only itself. However, those guys, if they run as is locked into this particular technology. There's no way out from there. So that's just another downside, I think.
got a great example of a client that I have today that has over 1,500 customers running on a Microsoft Access-based system on several virtual machines, and the customers are paying for this. It's an annual subscription model, and they're feverishly working to replatform. Now that's a pretty good example because you can't even find a resource that could even support Microsoft Access, and it's not even supported by Microsoft, nor does anybody want to support that. Where there are legacy technologies, you can find people, but it can't scale, it can't integrate, you can't run analytics on anything. That's probably a pretty good candidate to replatform.
Yeah, Access was, I'm sure there's still an awful lot of Access because it was a great tool for non-coders or people who
Absolutely.
had minimal coding skills. You got an integrated database, you could create tables, you can create screens, you can even do a little bit of access controls around the data, and you can have a lot of functionality. I'm sure there is significant access legacy applications sitting around, right?
It's a little bit like handing out a drawer full of scissors to a bunch of kindergartners and let them just run around the apartment.
So, David, question for that.
Yes.
Is that kind of the legacy of legacy applications still running and customer paying for that? How many customer pays for that? It's the company is still having profit from that application?
1,500 customers are running on that. So
Okay.
they have got multiple virtual machines running in their physical data center on-prem that constantly go down, that clients are paying for. Yeah, it's unbelievable. Now, I mean, they have obviously stretched their subscription model to the brink. I mean, you can't do much more with it.
So that means for that one, there's no new, let's say, features added into it, no enhancement, nothing.
Nothing. And even that's an example of technology. You could you still get access with Microsoft Office, right? But Microsoft is upfront saying there hasn't been an improvement to Access since like 2015 or something like that. I mean, they just say it is what it is. You're not getting any support on it. I mean,
the next one, speaking of legacy applications, is retire, which is basically turn it off, cut the cable, shut it down, forget all about it, decommission it. So David, have you actually done that? Just out and out, just retired some of your legacy applications that you have? And why did you do that versus any of the other R's?
The only times that I've really officially retired something is during mergers and acquisitions. When you have a merger situation and there's a competing product and you have to make a decision and you got to turn it down. Otherwise, it's never been that, for my experience. I've never been in a clear retirement situation of any platform.
I've seen it with, retiring parts of an application.
Yeah.
And I'll pick on reports, right? Specifically, when you're doing a refactor of an application, especially with a legacy reporting system, you might have 200 reports, but only 50 are actually used, and you just turn off most of the reports, and that just saves lots of trees and lots of PDF files getting generated in the processing power around that.
I did just think of one. It was a large retail business that you all know of, who took one of their business lines and spun it down and basically closed it. Those applications we got rid of. We've retired those. But again, that was those are more business reasons, not using that capability anymore.
Yeah, what about you, Maverick?
Yeah, this is just trying to recall one of the experience, not directed to me, but I worked very closely with that one of the retire application. Happened this during the acquisition. It's back to 2003 when I work in Singapore there. So there's the big banks. Our banks purchase acquisites another bank from Thailand, and one of their applications is set a certain up. Some sort of the predictions or suggestion to their customers. They have some number around 10,000 customer bases on that. And however, after re-evaluations, that's just not the Singapore banks interested, so they're going to stop that. But stop that one means not necessarily just all of a sudden stop the business. No, they just turn off the whole applications and making everything so people have to go back to the paperwork and everything and submit their work and mail in, mail out, using that way to maintaining this. But I heard after pretty much maybe 9 months or a year, it's completely stopped. So that's the way. Yeah, out of the business for that.
So, in the last art is refactor, which is the one where most people spend an awful lot of money and where, a lot of people run into problems refactoring, which is really redesigning and rebuilding applications pretty much from scratch. And a lot of times, more recently, it's doing it so we can get into a cloud-based environment. So taking your legacy application, whether it be written in COBOL or just even a legacy technology, and then migrating over to the cloud and refactoring it and redesigning it. So David, you've probably done quite a bit of this, right? What are some of the pros and cons of refactoring legacy applications?
Yeah, I can just say that I've certainly been involved with a lot of initiatives that conscientiously decide they're going to refactor something in it, and that's a little bit like understanding that's an investment you have to do to keep the lights on. It's like water, it's like electricity. You have to invest in that. But I've also, back to the replatforming, whenever there's a replatforming initiative, it seems to always involve refactoring. It's hard to not have refactoring when you're replatforming. But I would just say, when you're getting into refactoring, some of the things to just watch out for is, and I've seen this. Don't assume that refactoring is going to have an ROI for you. That's very measurable, right? Again, it's like a utility. It's like electricity cost that you have to invest. You need it to run. But there's a lot of people that get hung up with trying to do a cost analysis and figure out what the return on investment is. And that's a really hard thing to do in the refactoring world. And it's something from a strategic perspective that you have to build into your strategy up front and realize that's part of the SDLC and part of the life cycle of any healthy business functionalities. You have to be constantly planning that in.
Yeah, I think Gartner and Forrester always talk about, when you're migrating to the cloud, a lot of people want to look for an ROI. And that's a good example, right? There probably isn't an ROI when you're refactoring
It's
a
hard.
legacy application onto the cloud. People think it's going to save costs. Even Gartner and Forrester, people like that say, don't expect to save costs, right?
Yeah,
It's going to be a big investment. There's a big capital investment in people to rewrite, and then you'll see a big expense jump because of the cloud, and then you get to optimize some of these costs, but there is no ROI. Maverick, what about you? What have you seen in the refactoring world?
Yeah, so you know that we work together for the refactoring of big legacy systems. So usually the driver for that could be coming from two things in my hand, which is first, we try to do some replatform, but end up like a refactoring. That just could be one way, very nature. So you reflect this one, you find, oh yeah, this is good at, let's do the others. So one by one, eventually become to the refactoring. This is one type. Another type is, so replatform may or may not, or this is not satisfied from enterprises' IT visions for the long run. So that means, okay, you have to completely transform your application to a new way, new form. So that causes the refactoring at the first time. So when we're doing the refactoring, usually we have two approaches. Maybe we need another session to talk about them. One is the big bang. So you write a completely new application, and that application, after tested and everything's aligned with the expectations from the old one, just to replace that one. So cut off. Another one is called strangulations. So it's pretty natural about replatforming one module and one module and one module, this type of things. So that will take a little bit longer time, but significantly reduce the business operation risk. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I agree, right? There's Big Bang is always scary because you turn off the old application and turn on the new one, and that's there's a lot of pucker moments there with that, and then
And nobody knows how
strangler.
the old one works.
Yeah, it's you hope it
yeah.
all works. Even no matter how much kind of runs that you do in parallel, such as silent mode validation, it's still entertaining to do that. The other approach is what Martin Fowler talks about as a strangler fig, which you slowly but surely eat the apple piece by piece and modernize. And that takes longer, and there's also more throwaway pieces with that because it's never as seamless as piece by piece, and you always got to keep both systems running. And so it's more interesting there. But I'm sure we'll talk more in some other session. So we're about out of time. So David, any final thoughts on the 6 R's of application modernization?
Yeah, I just think, when people talk about the 6 R's, everyone talks about them as mutually exclusive. And I think they all blur together. I think sometimes you can't do one without the other. It's not simple. And I just, what I try to always think about is, what are those business drivers, and try to keep my technology religions out of these decisions, because it's about the business drivers and the business value. And that's my main takeaway of how to look at these things down the road. And it's not because I think I'm ultra smart. It's because I've made so many mistakes. I've learned from them.
Yeah.
In Maverick?
Yeah. So the 6R each one of them has a reason to be the go with. So there's no single answers or, one silver bullet can solve all the problem. No something at all. No simple and direct answer for that. It's really driven by a lot of the factors such as business needs, technology driven, or the cost efficient, or any others. So this, each one of them they have the good use cases, pros and cons. So we may just specifically down to each one of them and talk about that things specifically. Yeah, with
Okay.
more things. Yeah.
Great. Okay, we've had a great discussion. Thanks everybody for watching, and we'll produce a few more of these because it's just fun to talk about some of the scars that we all have. Okay, thanks everyone. Bye.
Thanks for
Bye.
having me.